Hello, and welcome to our series of author interviews. I'm Selena from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester, and I'm here with Sarah Beth Durst, who is an award-winning author of speculative fiction for adults, for kids, and for teens. And Sarah Beth, um, could you please explain a little bit about what you write for people who are not familiar with your work?
I write books that are filled with adventure and humor and hope and lots of talking animals and sometimes no talking animals and a whole range. I have my 25th book is coming out shortly. So a third of them are aimed at kids, a third are aimed at teens, a third aimed at adults. Usually the way you distinguish is if things are trying to eat you, it's adult. If things are trying to befriend you, it's the kids. And I write books that are designed to give you a place to escape. They are to take you on a journey and take you away from whatever's going on in your life and take you on an adventure, maybe give you some friends and bring you back again safe and sound, hopefully slightly changed.
Oh, wonderful. So, what do you think draws readers to these books? Just to be able to get away from everything and
I hope so. I hope they're drawn to books because they want to have fun. That they want to have an enjoyable few hours reading about somebody else trying not to die.
okay. So, can you tell us a little bit about your latest book, The Lake House?
I would be delighted. I am so excited about my new baby. So I have an arc. So the finished copy will be in hardcover. And it's called The Lake House. And I'm so excited about it. This is my very first thriller. It's a YA thriller, YA survival thriller. And it's about three 16-year-old girls who are stranded in the wilderness in Maine with no food, no water, no shelter, and there's a killer in the woods. And they need to, not die. At its heart, it's really about the strength of female friendships, of the strength of teen girls. And I had so much fun writing it. I can't wait for people to read it.
Okay. And what was the inspiration for that?
This is actually the first book I've ever written that was inspired by a TV show. I've gotten inspiration from all sorts of, the standard places, from a dream, from a random thing somebody said, so forth. This was actually, I can pinpoint what it was from. It's from the TV show Alone, which airs on the History Channel. And it's a reality show where they drop like 10 people off in the wilderness in like Vancouver or Alaska or someplace where they need to, not die. And it's just by themselves, and they've got their camera and they film themselves. They're all survival experts, and they film themselves with the 10 items that they came with of getting food, setting up shelter, and basically starving for however long they can. And whoever lasts the longest wins. And I'm fascinated by survival shows and survival stories, mainly because I have zero survival instincts on my own. Like, I am the friend you want with you in the zombie apocalypse because I will be eaten first and you can escape while the zombies are munching on me. So I'm fascinated by this. And I wanted to write about girls dumped in the survival situation. Now, these are not survival experts. My main character, Claire, does watch these TV shows, but she's never made a fire on her own or anything like that. And so they have to survive in the wilderness with danger all around them. And it was so much fun to write. And I'm so happy it's not like me in the wilderness, but I loved writing. So,
So, how much research did you have to do for The Lake
uh,
House?
quite a bit of like oddball research. That's one of the fun things about being a writer is you get to research these bizarre things. Like when I wrote Fire and Heist, which is wait, show that one. This is Fire and
Okay.
Heist. It's Ocean's 11 with were dragons. So I watched all these YouTube videos on how to pick locks and downloaded all these schematics of like Fort Knox and like really secure places. And I felt like all of my searches should come with a little like asterisk of like, this is for a book. I swear it is. But for Lake House, it was a lot of survivalist research. So many videos on how to build a fire, so many instruction things, um, little random things like how to get the outboard motor off the back of a boat if you don't have any tools with you. how to cook mussels if you don't have any pots or pans. Things that you don't normally know. And so much research on what trees. It's set in Maine, which I've been to many times because I grew up in Massachusetts. So of course I'm quite familiar with what trees are there, except when you start writing about it, are you really familiar? Or are you just like, oh yes, trees, New England tree. Wait, what are they named? Which trees do we have? So I did a lot of research of, what trees, what bushes, what lichen, and probably nobody but me will care, but the trees are accurate.
Uh,
Research is very fun.
so did you have to do more research for this book than any of your other books?
Not well. Hmm. It depends. To a certain extent, yes, because it's set in the real world. And I did want to get the details of, like, as I said, how to
Right.
make a fire correct, without actually me trying to make a fire in the backyard. I did not go that far. um, but a lot of my books require a surprising amount of research, even like the depths of the fantasy. Wait, I'm going to hold up more books. Race of Sands is a
Right.
standalone epic fantasy about monster racing. I watched and read a lot of books about horse racing, Kentucky Derby kind of stuff for that. And also the setting, it's set in a desert, a whole lot. And even though it's a completely fantastical desert, it's not modeled off of one specific Earth desert. It's
Okay.
an amalgam of a bunch of different deserts. I researched an amalgam of different deserts to create it. Because the thing is, when you're writing anything, really, you're asking a reader to believe in something that's not real. You're asking them to take this leap. And the more you can ground it in real world details, the more of a leap you can buy. So, in some sense, the more magic you have in a story, the more real you need so that the reader goes with you. You buy the magic with the real.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what was your favorite research story? And it doesn't have to be from Lake House. I mean, it's just from any of your books.
My favorite. Oh, there's just a lot of cool details. I am totally a research nerd. You just I love making notes. I love making bulleted lists, spreadsheets, love spreadsheets. um, and just the little details that give rise to plot points. Those are the kinds of detail things I like. Like when I was writing Ice, which is a retelling of the Norwegian folktale East of the Sun and West of the Moon. It's set in the modern day Arctic, about a research scientist and a talking polar bear. And one of the details I remember reading was that if you cry at the top of the world, your eyelashes will freeze and break off. I just think that's such a cool character bit. And then for Lake House, when I'm looking up how to make a fire, you think of when you're a person that doesn't normally sit around and make fires from scratch. You're like, okay, you rub a stick and a sparkler, like that is really hard to do. Getting a fire based off of friction, very challenging. But I ran across in my research this cool little technique. If you have a battery and a stick of gum that comes in one of those shiny silver aluminum wrappers, if you cut the wrapper so it's a sort of an hourglass shape, skinny in the middle, fat on the two ends, put one in the positive end of the battery, one in the negative end of the battery, the middle will burn and you'll get a spark and you can light a fire.
Whoa,
Right? So
that's
there,
clever.
survival tip for everyone.
Very clever. So
So
what you mentioned that you put your research in spreadsheets. Is that's your favorite way to collect all the information?
well, I'm probably a little messier than that with it. I write all my I just type my books and I do all my research on the computer. I don't have stacks of notebooks. Well, okay, not many, no, a few notebooks. I do love notebooks, but I do try to compile it on the computer and I just make a big folder for the project and then I put thoughts, outlines, research, draft, like little subfolders within it. Into the research folder, I just toss everything that I find. Links that lead to interesting things, and then I try to compile them, usually in a sort of like Word document that I call my little nerdy packet. of all the details that I need to reference. And if it comes with a spreadsheet, that will go in there. If it gets color coded, so be it. It really depends on the project, how much I need to access. One of my upcoming projects is coming out next summer. So summer, not the summer 2024, is a middle grade book called Spy Ring. And it is my very first completely not speculative work. And it's based on the Culper spy ring, which is George Washington's spy ring that is in Long Island, or was in Long Island 250 years ago. And that required, my research file for that is tremendously huge. And that's got all sorts of stuff in it. And that has been such a fun rabbit hole to dive down and explore. So it's really very much project dependent how much research. I try to let the book dictate. And there's always a danger when you start researching that you'll see these, like, you get distracted and you start chasing off after different, like, oh, how does moss grow? Do trees talk to each other? You run off into these things that never appear in the book, but
Right.
you have to rein yourself back and be like, nope, writing a book now, writing a book.
It's true. I know some people have post-it notes all over the place. Some
Yeah.
people use something like something like some of the Scribner,
Yeah.
I guess, and some of the software. Um, and it's really interesting to see how people connect things together. Yeah.
Yeah, you sort of make your own homegrown technique. I mean, I've never used Scrivener, but I know people that love it. It's a great tool. But yeah, you just sort of develop your own technique for keeping your brain organized, because writing a book is all about corralling the details and finding the details, because that's what brings it to life. That's what casts a spell, is choosing those right details to bring the story to life inside the mind of a stranger.
So it's not just writing the plot, it's kind of writing the characters, thinking of the characters, doing the research. It's really
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah,
Really.
absolutely. It's all those pieces flood in together. It's weaving it. I mean, you can have the greatest plot in the world, but if you don't care about the characters, you're not going to follow the plot. They don't even have to be likable, but you need to care about what happens to them next. And that is the boat that you ride through the plot. You can have the most detailed world, but if nothing interesting is happening, you need all the pieces to knit together in order to have the sweater.
Absolutely. So are you a pantser or a outliner?
I'm both. I'm both. I do an outline, but not a super detailed outline. It tends to be a couple pages just with bullet points, and usually 3/4 of the way through it says, and then something awesome happens. That we'll figure out later. And I like to have the outline because it keeps in mind the structure of the story, that the skeleton that the story is
Mhm.
going to be wearing. And it also allows me to divvy it up into manageable bits. I mean, you can't sit down and say, I'm going to write a novel today, because it's huge. But you can sit down and say, I'm going to write this scene. And it helps to have the breakdown of what those scenes are going to be. But that said, I give myself permission to ignore the outline, sometimes immediately. And I will re-outline between drafts. I'll re-outline even between chapters sometimes. Just give yourself permission to discover what the story is, to let the characters lead you in a particular direction based on where you've put them in the story. Because when you do the outline at the beginning, you don't know everything. You haven't heard the characters walk and talk and seen them interact with the environment. That the act of writing gives you more ideas. So I am both a pantser and a plotter.
Okay, great. A lot of writers are. Yeah. So what was the biggest challenge that you had in writing and putting out The Lake House?
Every book really comes with its own challenge, because they're all a story that doesn't exist yet. They're all a story you've not written. And I really wish that you could tell before you started writing which ones were going to be very challenging and which ones were not, and then just do the ones that are not. But I can never tell until I'm in the middle of it. For The Lake House in particular, I would say that the challenge was the breath in it. It is a story in which the three girls are in peril for pretty much the whole time. They are running through the forest a lot. But you can't have a story that's simply running through the forest. First off, the characters will get like really tired and die, and that would be sad. Also, the reader would get really tired and put down the book, hopefully not die. Um, so you need to have those moments of breath, those moments where the story has a chance to expand and contract and to take a moment and nail down where we are and what's going on and to grow. Because there's always two stories going on in a book. There's always the story of what's happening on the outside, that they're running away and they're trying to just survive and blah, blah, blah. And what's happening on the inside, that emotional and intellectual journey that the character's going through. So you need to structure it so that both of those plots are moving to get to that moment at the end where everything feels correctly resolved. So that it was a challenge, and a fun challenge. I love the challenge in writing this book, was to get that pacing right of, yes, they're in peril, but they need to stop and take a breath here before that starts chasing them again, you know?
Were you nervous about writing a totally different type of book than you had before, the thriller as opposed to fantasy?
No, I wasn't, because it's all story. It's all story. I remember when I first switched to writing adult as well as writing kids, all these people started asking me, well, was it hard to write adult? I was like, oh, was it supposed to be? No, no one told me that. Every book, you have to get into the mind of the character and see the world through the character. And once you do that, once you're able to get the voice and the music of the sentences and the silences that are going into the prose, then it's fine.
Okay.
The trick is always getting that voice. But once you've gotten that voice, that writing a new story doesn't scare me. Writing a new kind of story doesn't
Good,
scare me.
great. Okay. So, was there any character that you really loved or really hated in the lake house?
I love them all. Well, except for the one I hate. No. Uh, so it's about three girls. Claire is the main one. We see the story through her eyes, Reva and Mariana. And they're all very different personalities, and I adore them with all my heart. I want to hang out with them and want them to be my friends. One of the best parts of writing is that you get to create these characters that you fall in love with and that you get to have live inside you. And then you kind of make terrible things happen to them, but you know, they forgive you eventually. Uh, as far as the character that I hate, okay, I don't think I can describe this character without giving away spoilers. But if you read the book, there is one character that I very strongly dislike, and that will come across very clearly in the book.
Okay.
Is that fair?
We won't make you give a spoiler.
Okay, cool. It is so hard to describe a thriller because I don't want to, like, part of the joy of this type of book is being surprised. But I you know, when I'm writing, I'm like, ooh, there's this part and there's this part and there's this part. And I want to share it all, but I have to wait and share it in book form.
So, what else can we expect from you in the near future?
I am always writing new books. It's what I do. It's what makes me happy. So there's always going to be new books on the horizon. The ones that are on the immediate horizon, well, Lake House, obviously. The one after that, coming out in February 2024, is called The Lies Among Us. This is also very stylistically different. It is much more of what I'd call a book club book. And it's for adults, and it's about a woman who does not exist. And it explores sisterhood and grief and the nature of lies. And the book after that is totally different as well, which I mentioned earlier, called Spy Ring. And this one is going to be coming in summer 2024. The Lies Among Us is coming out February 2024 from Lake Union. Spy Ring is coming from Clarion Books, which is HarperCollins, in summer 2024. And it is a kid's book for ages 8 through 12. And it's about two kids who go on a treasure hunt adventure to discover the truth about Anna Smith Strong, which is the America's first female spy, one of the spies in George Washington's spy ring during the Revolutionary War. And there are no talking animals in that one. But there is a lot of fun and a lot of history in it. And I actually am sending off the revision to my editor as soon as we're done talking. So
Okay.
it's nearing completion.
Okay. So I have some questions about being a writer. What's
Yes,
your favorite part about being a writer on the whole writing and publishing process?
that is my favorite question because I know the answer to that one. I love the writing. The
Okay.
sheer the sheer act of stringing words together into a sentence that will prompt a story in someone's mind just feels like magic to me. I mean, it's I've always loved books like forever, and I've always seen them as magic because they conjure up these journeys. They create these friends for you. They make you feel things. They make you laugh. They make you cry, and I just always wanted to be a part of that magic. And that's what it feels like to me when you find a sentence that sings, when you find a bit of dialogue that you can picture the person saying it, when you find just the right detail that brings a world that doesn't exist to life, or a person that will never exist to three-dimensional realness. I love figuring out how to use the silences in a story and writing a really short sentence and then a really long paragraph and then another little back and forth, that just playing with words. That's my favorite part of being a writer.
Ah, okay. Wow. So what do you consider the most challenging part about being a writer on the and how do you overcome it?
All the times when you're not saying. Um, yeah, I mean, the most challenging part is a couple different ways to answer that. I mean, there are challenges in the actual act of writing when you hit that blank page and the scene is not going how you thought, and what you've written out does not match the vision that you had in your head, and you don't know how to get there. That is challenging. And the way I've found to get through that writer's block is to write through it, and lie to yourself like a lot. Like tell yourself that this scene is never going in the book. No one's ever going to see this. I can just play. And you just write it out. Or you backtrack to where you got last stuck, where you last liked the book, and start there. So that's always a challenge. And then there's the generic challenge of finding the time to write in and around finding the time to live. You know, the balancing of it all, which I think is something that everyone does with their work and their life. I achieve that by having no balance whatsoever. I pretty much write all the time in between everything. I write in little spurts between empty the dishwasher, write a paragraph, and do this, write a paragraph. You know, I weave them together. So it's not like I have separate writing hours and separate life hours. And sometimes that works and sometimes it's harder. But I think that's sort of a universal challenge.
In your life hours, what are your passions that when you're not writing?
Not writing. Okay. Not writing. Well, my family, obviously. Spending time with my family and playing board games with them, watching TV shows, having dinner, going for walks, talking on the phone with my mom. That is my favorite thing to do outside of writing. In terms of hobbies, I like taking walks. I play the piano and I've been teaching myself guitar, and I'm terrible at both of them, but I enjoy them. Of course, I read books, obviously, pretty much all the time too. Usually, when my brain is too tired to form my own sentences, that's when I go and hide out in other people's sentences. And past couple of years, along with the rest of the world, I learned how to bake. So still cannot get a decent baguette, but I have pretty good pretzel rolls.
Okay. So, what has been your favorite adventure during your writing career?
Question. Oh, and here's my cat. This is my writing partner, Gwen. She helps me write all my books. And favorite adventure. Well, writing the books themselves is always an adventure, but outside of that, a cool thing that happened not that long ago is one of my books, Drink, Slay, Love, was a question on Jeopardy. That was a few months ago. That was a cool adventure. In terms of leaving the house sort of adventure, I once went to Chicago for a book event. I can't remember if there was a C2E2 Comic Con or ALA, American Library Association. It was one of those conferences. And my publisher set up for me to stop at pretty much every indie bookstore that they had in Chicago. And they had me rent a car and find my way to all of these indie bookstores. I'd never been to Chicago before, never really driven in a city before, and find my way to bookstore to bookstore. And I got to discover so many awesome little bookstores. I lost a few times, but it all worked out just fine. And that was an adventure and really, really fun. And I'll never forget that. One of the best parts about being a writer is that you get to go out and meet people that love books. And I love that.
Mm, yep, that's great. So, what piece of advice would you want to share with other writers?
Don't give up, and be kind to yourself. I think that actually I would go with that as the biggest thing is be kind to yourself. A lot of times when you, particularly when you start a new work, um, it doesn't match up to what you want it to be. It doesn't match up to the books on your shelf, the books that you love. And that's because you're comparing a first draft, an initial idea to the finished book that's been under revision like dozens of times. It's sort of like pulling up a carrot while it's growing and being like, is this done yet? You can't really shove it back in the earth. So be gentle with yourself and give your story a chance to grow. Give yourself a chance to grow as a writer. Give yourself the kindness and support that you would give a friend that was pursuing this dream. And make that little critical voice in your head be quiet while you get the work done. There are different ways to do this. I listen to music when I write so that the critical voice goes off and sings along. It likes music. You can tell yourself you're playing and you're just auditioning things. You can make it a game, whatever tricks you need to do to get past whatever is blocking you. Because the only way to become a writer is to write. It's one of those things you get better at the more you do. So the more you write, the more you read, the more you feed yourself stories, the more you play with stories, the more you become a writer. It also helps to have a cat. I recommend that.
Does your cat hinder or help you?
Oh, she's super helpful, you can tell. She helps. I've learned to type around the fur. Occasionally she takes naps in the caps lock key, which makes my scenes very excitable. And the tail, yeah, that's
the tail in the face. Yep.
yeah. But she spends a lot of time sitting like so when she was a kitten, I thought it was really cute to like snuggle her right here. And I thought, okay, when she gets bigger, she'll transition to sitting on my lap. And
What's her name?
her name's Gwen.
Oh, okay.
She is super soft. Yeah, she actually, that was the inspiration for one of my kids' books, Catalyst. Wait, I have that. I can show that. Hold on. This one.
Yep.
It's about a tiny kitten that grew and grew and grew and grew and grew and didn't stop growing. And she is definitely the inspiration for that.
Okay. So, what is the greatest lesson that you've learned in your writing career?
This lesson. Find the joy in the journey. I think that would be it. Just find the joy in what you do because it's not about the end moment. It's great to have a book on the shelf. It's lovely to walk into a store and see it sitting there, to get an email from a reader that was impacted by your work. It's great. Like if you get an award, that's cool. If you get to do these things, the Jeopardy thing was cool. One of my books was turned into a TV movie. That was really cool. But these are all moments, and they pass. And the thing that matters the most is do you love getting there? It's not about the end goal. Do you love the journey? Do you love the run, because it's a marathon, not a sprint? And if you don't love running, I do not love running, but I do love writing. If you don't love the journey, then it will be much harder than life should be. So I think it's find what gives you joy in what you're doing. That's probably the biggest thing.
Okay. And are there any groups, clubs, or organizations that you would recommend to other writers that might have helped you in your career?
SCBWI, Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, is a huge help to beginning writers if you're interested in writing for kids. SIFWA, the Society of Fantasy and no Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Association. That's what it stands for. Thank you. I joined that when my first book came out. You'd think I could get the name right. Um, that's a wonderful organization if you're interested in writing speculative fiction. Also, if you're interested in speculative fiction, I recommend going to cons, to conventions. In Massachusetts, Boscone is a fantastic one that's very book centric. World Fantasy Convention, World Science Fiction Convention, or whatever one is local to you. Those are great sources of support and information and meeting other people that care as much about stories as you do.
Okay. So, what is one thing that most people don't realize about you?
I'm afraid of skunks. Also frisbees. I have an irrational fear of frisbees. But skunks, the
You
one
and animals.
I know, I love animals, but skunks, I think they're beautiful and they're gorgeous from a distance. But when I was in kindergarten, a family of skunks moved into our basement right underneath the coat closet. My kindergarten teacher used to make me leave my coat outside the classroom, and I think that has informed my feeling about skunks ever since.
Uh, I could understand that.
And frisbees, I've just been hit in the face with frisbees too many times because apparently I lack the reflexes to catch them in a timely manner. So,
So, this is a hard one. Um, what question do you wish interviewers would ask you? And what would the answer be?
is a hard one. You've asked wonderful questions. I love all your questions.
Thank you.
What question? I don't know. The one I do like to be asked is why? Why do I write the books that I write? And I think the answer is to be a part of that magic. The answer is that I want to add to what's good in the world. I see it as there's a certain sort of ocean level of awesomeness that exists in the world, and I want to do my part, even if it's just a few drops, to add to that level of awesomeness that exists, to give this gift of a story to somebody that might need it, that might need to escape into a different world, that might need the characters that I've made, that might need the solace of a story at a particular time in their lives. And I write I write from a place of joy, and I write to give hope, and a sense of empowerment. All of my books involve um, primarily girls and women kicking butt. So I like writing about characters that come up against incredible odds and writing about the strength of the human spirit. And so I think that is why I write, to explore strength, to explore hope, and what it means to
Mhm.
have connections to other people.
Okay. So, what does your writing space look like? And what do you need to have around you when you're writing?
Well, a cat, she's sitting on my desk right now. Um, and I have a variety of different, well, let's see, what do I have around my desk? Monster, as one should have.
Yes.
I've got mug of pens. That's from the Culper Spy which is the next kid's book. I've got my Kindle with an elephant and glasses on it because I think he's adorable. Um, I now have reading glasses, which I didn't used to have. And I have this dodo. This is from Cat Clave when I was guest of honor at Cat Clave. And it's like really heavy. So if there's an intruder, I can hit them with the dodo. And I love it. I have things that remind me, and I've got books, many books, and over there, lots and lots of books. Things that remind me why I do this, things that are useful to me as I do this, my notes, research books behind me, pens, and that sort of thing. And one of my favorite things about my writing space is it's situated in a room that has sliding glass doors that are right against my living room. My cat. Right against the rest of the house, so that I can still be a part of my family's life while I'm writing. I like that it's not separated, which is another reason I also like my headphones on my desk too, just in case there's another episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine going on while I'm trying to write about something that has nothing to do with Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
So is there any special drink that you might have all the time, or food that you have at your desk?
I love hot chocolate. That's my drink of choice. I don't drink it as much in the summer because somehow that doesn't feel right. But as soon as it starts getting a little bit chilly, like I get a big box of Swiss Miss from Costco and pretty much daily hot chocolate. Chocolate in general is definitely a muse for me. Very, very fond of that. And I like to, one of the benefits of writing at home is that the kitchen is right over there. So I graze a lot. Cheese and bread. Those are favorites. Yep, good writing food.
Okay. And you mentioned that you listen to music when you're writing. What kind of music do you listen to? With
It
lyrics, without
depends.
lyrics?
It really depends on when I'm writing. I'm writing, well, let's see. Deepest Blue, epic fantasy with lots of sea monsters. I listen to a lot of sea shanties and soundtrack of Moana and the soundtrack of How to Train Your Dragon, because that takes place on islands as well as Wonder Woman soundtrack, writing music. So I do a lot of soundtracks from movies when I'm writing my epic fantasies. When I was writing Lies Among Us, which is the book club book coming out next year, I listened to a lot more sort of folk and jazz and soulful music. When I was writing my vampire book, there was a lot of vampire-ish rock involved. So I try to kind of make playlists that match the tone and the style of the book to keep me in that mood. And sometimes it requires music with words so that I have that steady sound coming in. And sometimes it can't be music with words. And I'll do a lot of Enya, which, yes, it has words, but they're like often Welsh or Celtic or whatever she sings in, and I have no clue what she's saying. So it counts as instrumental. Star Wars music works great for some of them, and in some cases it's too specific because it's too much conjuring of somebody else's story. So it varies, and I have a large iTunes thing, and sometimes I just put on random for all the music, and then I get something coming up, and they're like, that's not right. It's like Leonard Nimoy comes on singing The Legend of Bilbo Baggins. I'm like, no, that's not the mood here, but great song. So
I have that record.
it is an excellent song.
Okay. So how important is the New England setting to your writing?
Actually, pretty huge. I live in New York now in Long Island, but I remain a New England girl at heart. A lot of my books take place in New England. My very first book. This is my very, very first book. It's called Into the Wild, and it's about fairy tale characters who live in secret in the real world in Northborough, Massachusetts, which is right outside of Worcester. And it's sprinkled throughout with, Bancroft Tower gets transformed into Rapunzel's Tower. And
Wow.
Yeah, so it's and then the one with the catalyst that I showed you earlier
Yep.
takes place in Massachusetts as well. And there's a journey north, and they stop
Yep.
at you remember? Do you remember Whalum Park? Have a whale of a
Yep.
time.
Yep.
They stop in the old amusement park, the remnants, the ruins that are were left. I don't even know if the ruins are still there, but they are in my book. Um, and I've got some that take place in Connecticut and some that take place just vaguely in New England-ish region because it's a place that's close to my heart. And the new one, Lake House, is in Maine, so not very far from Mount Monadnock. That's where it's that
Oh,
sort of
right.
very wilderness national forest area.
Right. So I have two more questions for you. One is where can people find your work aside from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester? And I have to give a
Definitely
plug for
Annie's book
Annie's.
stop. Yes.
Yeah, I have to give a plug for Annie's. You can get Sarah's books at Annie's if you call us at 508-796-5613, or you can email us at orders@anniesbooksworcester.com. So where else can people find your books?
Well, I should come to you first.
Thank you.
And wherever people like to buy their books. I mean, any bookstore would be able to, if they don't have it on their shelf right then, it's an older book or whatever, they just happen to not have it, the bookseller can order it in for you. Any online book retailer will have it, Amazon, B&N, Books A Million, whatever your poison of choice is for finding your books, wherever books are sold.
Okay. And my last question is, how can we follow you and share your awesomeness?
Oh, thank you. I'm online. My website is www.sarahbethdurst.com, where I put all my info. I've got events coming up on so if you click on events, they will show all like the launch events for the Lake House, as well as any future events. And I've got first chapters of each book, so you can do a taste test and see which one you like best because they are all quite stylistically different. So, and you might be in different book moods, so you can try it out and see what you like. On social media, I am at Sarah Beth Durst. I am on Twitter and Facebook and Tumblr and Instagram and also TikTok, though I don't do very much on TikTok. And any social media and Hive. I'm on Hive as well, but it's all Sarah Beth Durst. So
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining me, and it's wonderful. I'm so glad you've been writing so much lately.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful talking to you. And thank you for all your wonderful questions.
Okay. And we will be seeing you hopefully at our store sometime.
I would absolutely love that. And if not, my books will be there. So
Yes, your books will be here. Sarah Beth Durst. Okay, we'll be seeing you. Bye.